First of all, let's begin with this really incredible situation unfolding on the ground here. Israeli forces accused now of opening fire on a crowd of Palestinians who are trying to get food from aid trucks in Gaza City. I just wanted to show our viewers this vision again. Of course, NBC News cannot independently verify Hamas or Israel's two very different accounts of exactly what's happened here. NBC reporting, citing eyewitnesses, saying Israeli forces opened fire. Israeli officials say they died in a stampede. Shots were fired at a specific group. But the video released by the IDF shows crowds surrounding trucks and then Palestinians running away from them. So can I just get your reaction to this situation and ultimately what it means for the trajectory of this war?
This is an absolute tragedy, and we have seen a pattern here. If we look at from the start of the war, we saw that first the Israeli army attacked Palestinian hospitals and that were accused of harboring Hamas terrorists. And first they said, well, this was Hamas rockets that landed in hospitals, and then they actually started attacking the hospitals. And so I think we've seen a pattern of systematic killing of Palestinians by the Israeli army. And we've had Israeli commanders actually telling the rank and file soldiers that they cannot commit war crimes. So I think the evidence is irrefutable here that there's been a mass killing of Palestinians who had lined up to get aid and food from aid trucks.
And of course, at the same time, President Joe Biden saying this extraordinary loss of life is ultimately going to complicate talks aimed at securing a ceasefire and the release of Israeli hostages still being held by Hamas in Gaza. Where do we stand on those negotiations, and why is it taking so long to see progress here?
I think Biden is absolutely right. He appears to have jumped the gun earlier in the week, saying that a ceasefire was imminent. And now, of course, we've had this tragedy unfold. And I think the prospects of a ceasefire are even more complicated. Of course, Hamas and the Palestinians want a permanent ceasefire. But Netanyahu and the political predicament in which he is do not necessarily allow for a ceasefire. Because remember that Netanyahu was in political trouble inside Israel long before October 7th occurred, the October 7th tragedy occurred. And so I think the road ahead is even more treacherous as we look to the coming days and weeks.
I think that's hard to disagree with. What's the next flashpoint that we should be watching?
Well, I think we really need to see what happens when Ramadan begins. The holy month of Ramadan is something that, of course, is a potential flashpoint. Will Israel let up on its campaign? Or will we see more of the same? And I think that is something for us to watch for. Will there be at least a gesture of goodwill towards the people who are suffering from starvation and war fatigue? Or will we see more of the same? I think the next week or so will be quite revealing in terms of the course of the war in the upcoming months.
Absolutely. We are coming up to a very, very critical juncture now. Mehran, I wanted to shift our focus over to the Iranian parliamentary elections, which are now here. Polling day, anything but free and fair in the Islamic Republic, though. All these candidates have already been vetted by the Guardian Council before being given approval to run. What should we expect?
Parliamentary elections in Iran have historically been rate of participation has been a lot lower than presidential elections. And we've had in the past some low levels of participation. This time, given the larger political sentiment of electorate towards the political system, I anticipate it'll hover right around 40%. Historically, Tehran, the capital, has seen much lower rates of participation because there the voting is on political and ideological lines, whereas in the provinces and in provincial cities, voting tends to be on familial, kinship, clientelistic lines. And so we might see actually higher turnout in the provinces. But ultimately, what we're going to see is a continued uniformity of factions across the different political institutions in Iran, with everything being done with an eye towards an impending leadership succession. Of course, the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, is 84 years old, and the assumption is that his demise would be in the coming years. And so I think the voting will be with an eye towards leadership succession in Iran.